Labour's coming out with new policies left, right and centre that seem to be a direct attack on buy-to-let landlords, and their latest one is EPCs. If you don't know what an EPC is, it's an energy performance certificate, and essentially your property gets assessed to see how much energy that it consumes per square metre. And you get a rating out of 100, which is a standard measurement, and then that gives you your rating from A to F. Now, it's hard to know what the motives are of Labour, and I don't really like talking about politics on the channel, but I'm not going to say Labour, but Starmer is, in my opinion, a fucking idiot with a lot of the things. And it's like, politicians a lot of the time, they don't really think about future consequences. They think it's going to impact one thing, but it actually impacts another. So I'm going to tell you how it impacts you, how it impacts your tenants, and the buy-to-let market in general, because if you own property, it is good for you. Shock horror. If you're not in property, it could become harder and harder to get involved. So what's this all about? Years ago, we sort of said about going net neutral, which is pretty much a physical impossibility, by the way, but we're going to go net neutral and everything's going to push towards this. And so instead of acknowledging the stuff that actually impacts greenhouse gases the most, they're going to attack some of the small things. All right, I'm going on a rant already. So one of those is properties go into an EPCC, but only in the rental market. Why only in the rental market when 60% of the property in the UK is owned and occupied? Do not know. Genuinely, that sounds baffling, doesn't it? They're not going to target 60% of the market. They're going to target 21% of the market, which is the private rental sector. But anyway, all private landlords by 2030 now need to have their property as an EPCC, or you legally cannot own it as a buy-to-let. Not that bloody simple though, is it? Let me break it down for you on why I think it's stupid and why you don't really need to be worried about the impact. First of all, will it become a reality? No, I can near guarantee it won't become a reality because there's a load of property in the UK that factually could never become a C. What? Yes, there are EPC F properties that would struggle getting to a bloody E. Think about the big-ass Victorian property that is an EPC F. You'd need to spend about 100 grand getting it to an EPC C. Which, don't worry, you absolutely won't need to do that. So first of all, why are they doing this? Ultimately, the environment has become a bigger and bigger thing. I'm not saying rightly or wrongly so, by the way. Like, I think we should be protecting the one world Earth that we've got. And so there's this big voting around it. Most politicians, they, in my opinion, can come across that they don't really care about the outcome. They care about getting voted in. And where do they get most of their policies from? Well, it's down to what the world's talking about right now. And one of them is energy, greenhouse gases, climate change, the impact. Again, not here to have an opinion on that, but obviously they're going to do things towards that. So why is it an issue? Like I said, a majority of the property, in fact, private rentals represent about 21% of the property market in the UK. So there's 26 million, give or take, in the UK. 21% of that is private buy-to-let properties. Of that, a third of the properties, so around 7% of the every property would need to suddenly be an EPCC that isn't. So a third of all properties are below a C. So think logically about that. If there's 26 million properties in that, that's going to be what, about 1.8 million properties that suddenly need to get upgraded to a C. It's not happening. Like, it doesn't take too much logic to think about this. So let me just talk about why this is a terrible idea, because if it actually has a negative impact on landlords, let's just say that, for example, let's say short term it hurts us. Does it? Does it really though? So number one, you got a couple of million properties. How is the government going to police that? How is the government going to force this into a reality? It can't. But let's say it absolutely could, and it just becomes prohibitive for landlords. Well, there's two outcomes of that. Either they need to spend money on the property. Who pays for that? Like, think logically. If having a buy-to-let property gets less appealing for the landlord, who pays for it? The tenant. It's always the bloody tenant. Obviously, that will get passed on just like every other investment out there. And I'm sorry if you don't think buy-to-let property should be an investment. We'll go back to social housing then and see how you bloody feel then. The second option is landlords go, do you know what? That's enough for me. I'm getting out of the market. And suddenly there's less rental properties available in the market. But if there's less properties available in the market to rent, but the demand is still high, what do you think happens? Basic economics. Demand over supply, prices go up. Yet again, the tenant pays for it. So the only way that they can really make this happen without impacting the very people that they're trying to overall help as a party is by introducing grants, which is exactly what they've done. So there are meant to be a load of grants coming in, but in general, they reckon the cost of doing this across the UK is going to be 25 billion. Dun, dun, dun. But there's a few things that they've put in place. So you've got the boiler upgrade scheme, which is all based around the boiler, which obviously has a massive impact on the energy performance, and the Great British Insulation Scheme. So actually, one of the best things that you could do is insulate the walls of the property and of course the roof, right? It loses a lot of heat through the roof. And those are going to be grants. If you don't know what a grant is, you don't pay the money back. So the two biggest things that can impact an EPC, there are going to be government grants for, which by the way is to the tune of 13.2 billion. Where the fuck did they get that from? But there we go. They're going to spend 13.2 billion towards this, which comes to a future thing. Where are they getting the money from? But directly for us, a majority of the portfolio that you're going to have already from those grants will go up to that either high D or low C, exactly where you're going to need it. The second thing they're putting into play is a cap on this. And so they are going to cap the overall cost to around £10,000. Well, let's think about that. How much do you think it costs for a new central heating system and insulation into the property? Well, you're probably going to talk between 6,000 and 8,000. And so if you're capped at 10,000, then the direct cost to the landlord will end up being 2,000 to 3,000 over the next 6 years. Not really that big of a deal. The other thing that makes this really interesting is that they've committed to doing it to social housing as well. And so what they're setting themselves up for is aligned laws and contribution. What does this mean? Well, if they're opening it up for their rentals, social housing, and private rentals, you can't suddenly go, oh, by the way, but you've got a different rule. So very likely these are going to be aligned rules. And this is really good for landlords because either it's absolutely fine, the grants are in place and it helps everyone, or they realize how ridiculous it is and they have to scale back the plans. My honest opinion is it will be that one. So why is this good news? This overall is bad news for property investors, right? Well, no. What it is change. And a lot of people, you'll be seeing the media will be fear and frenzy because that's when they sell the newspaper. But the reality is change equals opportunity. There are only a couple of outcomes. Either the energy performance of the property is upgraded and it increases the value of the property, decreases the cost of the mortgage because there's energy pro mortgages, and either that is on our benefit because we can reduce the bills for the tenant. Tenants will end up paying more in rent. I'm not saying it's right, by the way, it's just how the economics work, or indeed it pushes a load of landlords out. Think logically about this. If it pushes landlords out, it doesn't impact that around 40% of the market still need to rent. What happens when there's less available stock? More people per property apply. What happens when more people apply? Rents go up. So a lot of people are terrified of this, but we're not. We're sadistically excited, let's say. And the reality is we know how to prevent it. We know how to be making sure we get properties that apply for the grants, because not all properties will. We make sure we've got a correct assessment of every single thing that we do to the property that could contribute to an increased EPC to make sure we are capped at that £10,000. And of course, we make sure that we're targeting properties that have the allowance to get to that D or C. Because again, you have to think, if it physically can't get to the C, then it's scrapped in the first place. And just so you know how that cap works, if that amount of money has been spent on the property getting it upgraded on EPC and it can't get there, then it's waived. You are fully exempt from reaching it. And so, look, all of this change creates opportunity. If you want more detail on this sort of thing, let me know and I can break it down way more. But the reality is, this is another opportunity. The property in the UK is the backbone. It really is. That and small businesses. Our country and the property sector within it is so crucial. There's just not enough stock available. And as much as these changes do have impact on us, you can't just assume that every change is a bad one. Yes, it means that there's going to be money to spend. Does it mean it's guaranteed? No. It's going to be in 6 years. I'm going to say that again. In 6 years, this is coming in. Do you think things could change? Labour might not even bloody be in power anymore. It's crazy. It's gone from one government to another and it's completely changed. Don't get attached to this. Likewise, there's going to be these grants in place. You just need to make sure you're lined up properly, you're applicable for the grants, you're documenting everything you do. The reality is, the environment we operate in has just become a little bit more complex, which means the barriers to entry have gone up, which means less competition coming into the market and more opportunity for savvy investors like you and me. And by the way, if you want to be one of those savvy investors, put APG in the comments. We actually specialize in this. My entire business is built off the back of me building my own buy-to-let portfolio and helping people just like you build theirs in the right way, being safe, dynamic, and making sure we maximize our returns. And so if you want a free strategy session, no obligation to do anything, completely free, no hard pitch, put APG in the comments. I'd love to help you navigate this new environment and show you how we're monetizing on it moving forward. If you're new to the channel, by the way, you want to find out more about these policies, the changes and how it impacts you, I'm going to be doing a whole series on this, the renters reform coming in, and so much more. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell. If you like this video, just tap that like button. It takes 2 seconds, but really helps us out, and I'll see you in the next video.